You're very welcome to the Woman to Woman show here on Confident Women Island with me, Roisin McClerick. I'm delighted to welcome back my next guest, Linda Murray from Beoga Nutrition. As Beoga Nutrition says, food should be enjoyable and tasty, and we should know what we eat, how we eat, and when we eat to help our digestive system. And Linda, you're very welcome back to the Woman to Woman show.
Thanks for having me, Roisin.
Linda, we've talked many times about digestive system, but not here on the Confident Women Island YouTube channel. Linda, I've learned from you so much about nutrition and how our digestive system really impacts our health in all areas of our health. So today you're coming on to talk about the digestive system. So as you always taught me, we should know what we eat and how we eat and when we eat. But tell us, the digestive system, it seems to me now that our brains must be in our stomach and our digestive system sometimes. So tell us about our digestive health and how it impacts our life.
Yeah, so your very valid point when you're saying your brain is in your digestive system. There is a phrase now that says your digestive system is like your second brain, because there is such a connection between your nervous system or your brain and your digestive system through the vagus nerve. So it is absolutely, your brain is not in there, but it's definitely very strongly connected. And when people talk about having, if you're excited or nervous or something and having butterflies in your stomach, it's all connected to your emotions. So it's not necessarily a food related thing, or, so we are one person, we're very connected. It's one of the things I love about the functional medicine model, that you're looking at a person as a whole and not just as individual systems. But the digestive system is foundation to a lot of our good health, to be quite honest. So in clinic, we work with a good few people with digestive issues. And one of the lines I use regularly is, if 10 people walk in the door to me with IBS or, a digestive discomfort of some sort, there's potentially 10 different reasons for that. So, like, our job is to try and figure out what's going on with the individual and try and help them to resolve their issues. And I suppose the other caveat I'd always put in place, Roisin, is digestive issues rarely happen overnight, so they rarely get resolved overnight. So I always ask people to, be realistic with themselves and set their own expectations, that they're not expecting a magic cure, because it doesn't ever happen like that. And, we can obviously try and manage symptoms while we're trying to figure out what's happening and resolve that. But don't expect that there is no magic bullet. There is no one supplement. There's no one thing that's going to make you feel better immediately overnight. So I suppose don't expect that of your digestive system. But from a digestive health perspective, I suppose it's very important to, get a little basic understanding of how your digestive system works. And because there's lots of different systems and they all work independently, but they're all having an impact on each other, and things can go wrong in a number of different areas. So if we start at the start of the digestive system, actually, how your digestive system is switched on, one of the first things that happens is called your cephalic phase or cephalic phase, where when you smell something, as I have my lovely coffee here this morning, when you get the smell of that coffee and your mouth waters, you walk into a supermarket and get that lovely fresh bread smell and your mouth waters, that's actually the start of the digestive process. And what's happening is that saliva in your mouth is full of digestive enzymes. So that's actually starting as soon as food enters your mouth to actually start doing the breakdown, the chemical breakdown. But it's important to remember, when we eat food, we're supposed to mechanically and chemically break it down. So we smell food, our mind goes, really looking forward to that. And it tells your digestive system there's food on the way. Then the next thing we're supposed to do is mechanically chew our food. Now, we are devils for inhaling food quickly and not breaking it, not taking the time to chew. So if you're ever eating like that and you need water to wash your food down, you're not chewing your food and you're eating too quickly. If you're ever finding that food is getting stuck, you're probably not chewing it enough. Or if you ever notice, if you say, oh, that food is bothering me. If you get a lot of bloating sometimes, but it's not always consistent across the food, you have to question, is it because you're not chewing or you're not eating your food? You know, if you're not digesting your food properly, as opposed to the food per se being a problem. It's different than saying every time I have, you know, whatever particular food, it causes problems. But if you can't pinpoint what's going on, sometimes you have to check yourself and say, am I actually chewing my food, and am I, you know, allowing it to be mechanically broken down before it goes into your stomach? Then from there, very simplistically, like, this is clearly not scientifically based, right? Well, it's very basic explanation. But when you start that mechanical breakdown, it sends a signal to your digestive system to say there's food on the way. So your stomach is going to produce your stomach acid, which is a very low pH if you work in pHs, or a very acidic environment. And the very acidic environment, that does a big chemical chop. So that HCl in your digestive system does a big chemical chop on your food, but it also triggers your pancreas to release digestive enzymes, and your gallbladder to release bile. And bile is like washing up liquid. So the digestive enzymes and the bile are all into your stomach with with the HCl, and they're all doing a big chop on your food. Now, you also need to remember that the stomach acid, when that's really low, what that's doing is it's putting a really, I suppose, aggressive chemical barrier in place for potentially any bacteria or pathogens that get into your digestive system through your food. So it's protecting your body from harmful bacteria that may be getting into your body through your food. So there's a lot going on. It's not, so we need to smell it, mouth water, chew your food into your digestive system for another chemical chop. When it's then fully digested, it goes in, or when it gets fully chopped up, it moves from your stomach and into your small intestine. And the role of your small intestine is to allow your nutrients to be absorbed. So I always describe your small intestine kind of like a sieve. So there's very small holes that allow your nutrients to go through. However, sometimes you get holes in that sieve, and larger molecules of undigested food can get through, or potentially pathogens. So, and because that's such a delicate, or a dangerous location in terms of your body and access from your digestive system into your body, about 70% of your immune cells are in the walls of your small intestine, in your digestive tract. So when people are talking about immune health, it's absolutely interlinked completely with your digestive health. So if somebody comes in and they've really bad allergies, but they've no digestive symptoms, we will automatically look at the digestive system to try and make that more robust. So even though you're not presenting with GI tract issues, I can see the connection with, other areas. Assuming everything gets absorbed properly in your small intestine, then the leftover, whatever's left, will move into your large intestine. And Roisin, we've mentioned before the microbiome. And the microbiome is trillions of bacteria, and probably yeast and fungus and stuff as well, that are located in your large intestine. And there is an absolute amount of research happening, a huge amount of research going on here in Ireland, down in Cork, in the APC Microbiome Institute. And they're learning more and more and more all of the time about how important our gut health is. And when we talk about gut health, we're talking about the health of the microbiome, and trying to keep that healthy. And that's some of the roles. It's having an impact on your immune system. It's having an impact on inflammation. It's having an impact on it produces some different nutrients. So it's doing so much stuff. It can have an impact on unexplained weight gain. It can impact your mood. Most definitely, there's a lot of research on that. So I would say categorically, probably the health of your microbiome has an impact on every other system of your body. And ultimately, after the microbiome, all the waste is excreted out of the body. And, that doesn't always work correctly either. So some people are not having a regular bowel movement, or some people are having too many bowel movements in a day. So lots of different areas in your digestive tract.
Wow, because you're just You explain it in everyday language that I
Oh,
understand.
good.
And it's what was, and I have a visual picture of everything that you've said. So that is the very start of the digestive, which I never knew was even just by the aroma or the smell or the sense of food. That actually is the start of the story of the digestive system.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never knew that before.
No, and it's really important. And I suppose that's why, and you said it when you were introducing me, that's why it's very important. What we eat is obviously critical, but how we're eating and how quickly we're eating and how regularly or how often we're eating all play a part in how well your digestive system is functioning as well. So it's all interlinked, it's not just if somebody comes into me and says, "Oh, that dinner really doesn't suit me." Maybe it doesn't, and that's absolutely a possibility. But sometimes it's not the fault of the dinner. Sometimes your stomach doesn't even realize there's food on the way because you might be eating when you're rushing around the place, or eating very quickly, or not chewing your food properly. And a lot of the symptoms, the digestive symptoms we experience, whether it's reflux or bloating or cramps or pain, a lot of those we can get under control. I'm not saying, we don't get rid of them all, don't get me wrong at all. But sometimes when you bring awareness to all these different steps, people are going, oh, yeah, actually, I always get that pain on a Tuesday when I'm rushing after my dinner, trying to get somewhere afterwards. So, and actually, we run a digestive reset program, a course that we do online. It's running currently. But I know one of our participants last year had texted me to say she was running late, and when she got onto the course at one point, not too long later, and she said, "Oh, I'm after trying one of the recipes, and I have a really bad cramp in my stomach." And I just said, I knew from the time she had texted me to the time she was on the phone, if she had managed to cook and eat her dinner, it was all after happening very quickly. And I asked her the question. I said, "Will you try the same dinner this weekend when you're not rushing in from work?" And she was able to realize very quickly the food actually hadn't been her problem. It was the fact that she absolutely gobbled it down. She wolfed it down, and she was hardly able to catch her breath because she was after eating it so quickly, and it was all stuck, and she was suffering because of it. So, I'm not saying the food may have been a problem, but in that situation, and often we would find when we calm down the digestive system and chew our food properly, especially with things like reflux, it can really make a big difference with how people are feeling after eating.
Because I suffer reflux and irritable bowel as well. But it's not, I've got the reflux under control and the irritable bowel under control now.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's through listening to you and talking to you that
good.
I've been able to do that. And that was also coincided what we eat, how we eat, and when we eat, and also why we eat as well is really
Yeah,
important.
yeah, it is. The why we eat is it's huge. And I mean, most people, and I say this, and I've mentioned to you previously, Roisin, when we were talking about menopause, sometimes the stress of what's going on in your day, or lack of sleep and exhaustion and tiredness, that's all going to drive what you're going to eat the next day. And what you eat, or the amount of coffee or the amount of alcohol the next day, will then drive your sleep quality the following night. So there's kind of a vicious cycle of, you have to just try and work it back to make sure you're getting a good night's sleep. And I say this knowing that it's not possible for everybody, but there's a lot you can do to improve your sleep quality. And it's not the pressure of you must be getting 9 hours sleep, but maybe if you can get an extra 15 minutes of sleep a night and
Yeah.
try and work it back, it makes the next day a little bit less stressful. And then your food choices and, eating and drinking because of exhaustion is less likely. Don't get me wrong. It's not that we don't have treats or we don't have nice things. That's, of course, we all do that, me included. It's not that at all. But ultimately, when we're trying to educate people and work with people in clinic, what we're trying to do is improve the quality of their life. And digestive symptoms and IBS symptoms can be really, really debilitating for people,
Yeah.
especially if they've been given the all clear from, if they've had a scope or a colonoscopy, and they're told, oh no, everything is fine, there's nothing wrong, but you every day you're struggling with these symptoms. It can be very upsetting for people. So it's good. I like people to realize that there are things that we can do to try and help help you to feel better and help to calm down your digestive system and manage those symptoms a little bit better.
So now on to the next process of our digestive system, the food we eat. And
Yes.
again, there's something else I learned from you is when we're changing our diet or, improving our diet, you always said, Roisin, add in before you take away. I always
Yeah.
loved that. So
Yeah.
talk to us about food and the different types of food to eat and what food to avoid and how to eat it.
Yeah. So I suppose let's start with how to eat it first. I suppose some people graze all day long. And if your digestive system is delicate or weak or sensitive, eating less frequently normally gives you a little bit more relief. It doesn't mean you're trying to reduce the amount of food. And sometimes you do need to be careful with the volume of food. But sometimes just not having all the snacks or not grazing constantly all day, that can be very helpful for people. So that's one thing just to be aware of. Another thing then when it comes to food is it really depends on what stage you're at. So if you have roaring IBS or even an irritable bowel disease like diverticulitis or colitis or Crohn's or even a celiac disease, depending on whether you're in a massive flare or whether you're not in a flare will depend on how you manage your digestive system. And I always say that to people, even if somebody comes in and they're having a really, really difficult time and we're trying to help calm down their digestive system, we might take food out of their diet for a very short period of time, but it's just to allow everything to calm down. And when it has calmed down, then we try and reintroduce foods. So I would always say try and eat as wide a variety and keep including as much food as possible. Don't exclude food just because somebody on the internet or your neighbor said, oh, you shouldn't eat that, it's not good for you. Because it may not be a problem for you at all. Gluten is a prime example. There's lots of people who do better without it, but there's lots of people that going gluten-free does absolutely nothing to improve their symptoms. So don't jump to, whatever you've read online. The other thing I would say is sometimes taking stuff out for a short period of time is necessary, but you can reintroduce it afterwards. Another kind of a general statement is try and eat whole food as much as possible. And what I mean by that is, and I know this is not always possible for everybody all of the time, but trying to eat real food, not processed food, is going to make a huge difference. So one of my bugbears, and I've seen this so often, Roisin, people would say, I'm on a gluten-free diet or I'm on a vegan diet. But all of a sudden, instead of choosing naturally gluten-free foods, they're now having gluten-free pizzas or a gluten-free bread. And it's the gluten-free products that have other ingredients that are not necessarily suiting them. So it's not that I'm not pro-gluten, anti-gluten, but processed food is processed food.
Yeah.
And if you have a food that has a list of ingredients, some of those ingredients you won't recognize. Now, we have very good small food producers, so it's not like you can't, you have to do everything from scratch at home. But if something is in a supermarket and it just because it's labeled gluten-free and it's like a baked good or a bun or whatever, and it's a shelf life of 6 months on it, food doesn't stay fresh that long without some intervention. And you have to question if that food, whether it's gluten-free or not, if you have a reaction to that afterwards, it may not be the gluten, it may not be the flour, it may be something else in there. So if you make the bun yourself or buy from somebody who's made it themselves, you might have a different reaction to it. So I suppose you can't have any sweeping statements about including or excluding food. Just try and keep real food versus not real food as much as you can, especially when your digestive system is sensitive and you're trying to keep as much food in your diet. That's one thing, I suppose, processed versus unprocessed. Another thing is plants. So, and this is another it depends scenario, right? This is always the challenge with digestive system. With plants or with vegetables, let's go with vegetables to start with. Fruit and vegetables, like they can do no wrong in my eyes, right? However, if you have a condition called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is where you have some of the bacteria that should be in your microbiome in your large intestine, and if they move into the small intestine for whatever reason, you may not react to some very healthy foods because of the location of these bacteria in your digestive tract. Now, in the short term, you can take those foods out, or you can take those plants out in the short term only. It is a symptom management tool only, and you need to resolve the underlying problem. So if you do have SIBO, there are tests you can do to check for it. And if you have it, you can test it and potentially then, get it resolved and then try and reintroduce the foods. Now, you may find that there's lots of foods. So when I'm talking about it, there's the low FODMAP diet is the diet that I'm talking about. It can be really, really powerful for helping to alleviate symptoms, but it is really, really restrictive, and it takes a lot of really healthy foods like onions, garlic, broccoli, lactose in milk, a lot of beans, chickpeas, pulses, a lot of those types of foods, really healthy foods, are being eliminated for a short period of time. So we try and resolve that problem and reintroduce those foods. But if you do find that you're chewing your food well, but you're still bloating quite significantly after healthy food and it doesn't make sense, you would have to question if you have SIBO or some kind of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And then you could try and work on resolving that. So including a wide variety of vegetables is absolutely brilliant if you can tolerate them, because they have lots of antioxidants and they have lots of fiber and they have lots of colors. So when you're talking about trying to eat variety and get a really healthy microbiome, they love plants. They love all the fruits and vegetables, the nuts and seeds, the beans, lentils, chickpeas, the whole grains. They love all of that. And every time you have a different color in a different plant, there's a different good bacteria going to benefit from it. So variety is absolutely amazing and essential if you can tolerate it. And if you can't tolerate it, that's a clue that there's something we need to do to try and get you over that hump so we can reintroduce those foods, because ultimately we want all of them in there. But for a short period of time, you just might have to keep off them until we get the situation under control,
Because when we talk about inflammation in the gut, we talked about gluten there now, and the digestive system and the lactose, the dairy. So they can also create inflammation in the gut.
They can for certain people, but they're not blanket problems. So it really depends on what's going on for somebody. Like if there's a very large percentage of the population, like a lot of, say, Chinese nationality, and there's definitely more in Ireland that struggle to digest lactose, the sugar in milk, and that's because they don't have the enzyme lactase. Now, you can buy lactose-free milk, which is brilliant, and wasn't available a number of years ago. There are other nutrients or different ingredients. There's 2 different proteins in the milk as well that sometimes can cause problems. So there's different ingredients that potentially cause problems. But sometimes when you feel you're reacting to everything, sometimes it's actually your digestive system and your immune system are in overdrive, and they're reacting inappropriately to foods that are not necessarily a problem. And that's where you kind of have to say, okay, we can take out the foods for a short period of time and try and help to calm down the inflammation in your gut, and then reintroduce the foods. So it's important to remember, Roisin, that food can be a problem, right? But it's rarely a problem on its own. Sometimes medication can cause problems. Sometimes a lot of stress can cause problems. Smoking can cause problems. Environmental toxins, if you're, whatever. There's lots of different things. And then the food just happens to get the rap. The other thing is, people would say, oh, I can't eat bread, it doesn't suit me. But actually, maybe it's because they're having Weetabix for their breakfast and, a sandwich for their lunch and pasta for their dinner. So you're having wheat. Yeah. And it's not that the wheat is a problem, but it's just such a volume of it in your diet that it's just your digestive tract can't cope with it. So it's just a matter of trying to be a little bit, this is going to sound a bit silly, but it's about being a bit cuter about introducing, maybe you have a nutty granola for your breakfast, maybe with some oats if you can tolerate that. Then all of a sudden you've no wheat for your breakfast. Maybe you have brown rice or potatoes or sweet potatoes with chicken stir fry, or rice noodles for your dinner, so you don't have more wheat there. So there's lots of tweaks you can make that doesn't. Maybe you have a big salad with 1 slice of brown bread or a couple of Ribena or something on the side for your lunch. or even some potato salad with it instead of having a big thick sandwich as well. So sometimes it's not you need to get rid of the food completely. You just need to reduce the volume of it. But there is not one nutrient like gluten or dairy. You know, there's not one thing that will cause problems, but often if your digestive system is not doing well, there are some culprits, I suppose, that we know that really can just make things worse, and you may need to reduce them for a period of time until we calm down the digestive tract.
You mentioned stress.
Yeah.
Enormous impact on our digestive system.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yes. So stress has an impact in a number of ways. So our entire body is governed by our nervous system. And our nervous system is split into two, your sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system is your stress response, your fight or flight, you get out of danger, you get up and go, and you move away from danger. Your parasympathetic nervous system is the other half. It's your rest and digest, right? Now, what you need to remember is when you're getting up and going away from danger, your body's really good at keeping you alive, but your parasympathetic nervous system is switched off. So you can't be half on, half off. So you're either sympathetic dominant or parasympathetic dominant. Now, if you're in the car, that lady I described to you earlier, if you're in the car, you're rushing home from work, you're running in the door, you have 5 minutes to get dinner into you because you need to be on a call, or you have to be somewhere else, and you're eating something really quickly, chances are you haven't given your body a chance to switch into parasympathetic nervous system. So your body's over here running away from a tiger, and you put food into your mouth and you're like, oh, that dinner really didn't suit me. And your stomach's thinking, are you having a laugh? I didn't even know that was on the way.
Yeah.
You know, so we need to kind of say, and I know that the lots of different people are going to have lots of different methods, but even just being aware of it, just to give yourself a moment before you eat, or try not be eating on the run. And I know it's easier said than done. I had my breakfast in the car this morning coming in. Like I'm not immune to this myself. However, if you are sitting with a pain in your stomach after your meal, you have to kind of think, was I just wound and stressed before I had that? Or is there actually a problem with the food? That's one thing. So you've got your sympathetic, parasympathetic. So you need to, you know, activate your parasympathetic nervous system to try and get your digestive system to work. The other thing is, if you're stressed all the time, there's a higher demand on nutrients. So your perfect diet may not be getting absorbed properly. So with the parasympathetic, it may not be absorbed properly, but because you're stressed, there may be a higher demand for nutrients. And what that tends to do is it can make your leaky gut situation a little bit worse, because you don't have all the nutrients you need to heal the gut and keep the cell walls really tight and intact, those junctions really intact. So you get whacked from a couple of different angles. And obviously when we're stressed, sometimes our food choices are not as good as we would like them to be. You know, it's more coffee and croissants than healthy meals. And it just, it's fine occasionally, but longer term, it does have an impact on your stress levels and then your next meals, you know. So it's all these vicious cycles. And what I would say all the time to people, Roisin, is don't try and get everything perfect straight away, because the overwhelm of that will make everything feel unachievable.
Yeah.
But if you know, I'm drinking too much coffee at the moment, try and switch out 1 cup of coffee. And too much coffee or caffeine is not coffee per se, but any caffeinated drinks, too much over the day is going to make your stress levels higher, which is not going to be of any help to your digestive system either. So just try and slowly but surely look at your diet and lifestyle and say, okay, this week I'm actually going to allow myself to slow down when I'm eating, chew my food properly, and see how I feel. Or this week I'm going to have 1 less coffee. Hopefully that will then improve my sleep. And then hopefully the next day I won't feel so tired. I won't be needing as many coffees. It doesn't mean you don't enjoy your morning coffee, but it's just, you're not relying on it to stay awake all day long, you know?
Yeah. And that goes down to, I would think that the very good idea, and even get into the habit of even starting off and changing how we eat, or why we eat, and when we eat, and what we eat, even down to one night a week. Make it where you're going in, you're going to enjoy preparing your meal. You're going to enjoy cooking the meal, and you're going to sit down and have time that one night a week to actually eat the meal and
Yeah,
not rush it. So even getting into that habit of that self-management of
yeah,
making an action plan that week, just do
yeah,
it once a week. And
yeah,
or even do that once a week of start of cooking from scratch,
yeah,
preparing it the day before, the night before. And because years ago we used to celebrate food, didn't we? We used to celebrate all sitting down as a family
yeah,
together. But life has got into such a fast pace. So
yeah,
that's what I've learned today is it's like the digestive system starts really from preparing the meal and as well as in our shopping. And it's, again, it's who do we shop for, who are we cooking for, and why are we cooking? So I like
yeah.
that as well. Who are we cooking for? And that put that down in our grocery shopping.
Yeah. Yeah, it's food, like meal planning and meal prep
Yeah,
is a game changer. And it sounds like the greatest nuisance of a task to do. But once you get into the habit of, and it doesn't need to be down to a really prescriptive level, but it's really important, I think, Roisin, to kind of think, okay, well, like for example, today I'm in clinic, I've got clients all day, by the time I have to collect my kids after school and do activities, in this evening. So we won't have dinner in our house this evening. So food is, as in like I won't be cooking dinner when I go home. So dinner is in the fridge ready to go, because other than that my kids will be not having dinner, or they'll be having a bowl of cereal or something. But the reality is by the time I get home, there's no way. So I have to have something prepared in advance. And if you don't do that, it's fine occasionally to grab something, but if you don't do that, it becomes very expensive to be grabbing food on the way home. You end up wasting amount of food if you're buying food and not actually getting to eat it during the week. Um, and like a little bit of prep at the weekend, whether it's just prepping. I love having prepped veg in my fridge. So last night, for example, when I went in, I had carrots and parsnips, and I had my one of my kids loves raw carrots anyway, so I'd always have raw carrots for her. But I actually just chopped up the carrots and parsnips and threw them into the air fryer with a little bit of oil and had them on the side of my dinner. And they're like roasted carrots and parsnips were absolutely delicious. And it's great to have the option of adding something like that in. Can you hear me there now?
I can hear
Sorry.
you. Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
sorry.
It's great to have the option of adding something like that in, but if you're trying to prep veg from scratch all the time, it's just you have to, like, if you're feeling lazy, it's easy to chop up a carrot. Whereas if you're going back and peeling stuff from scratch, it just makes it a little bit
Yeah,
less appealing to do. But also having things like bags of frozen vegetables in the fridge or in the freezer, or having things like tinned beans, packets of microwavable rice, if or cold rice in the fridge. Having stuff like that, like really good quality cheap ingredients in the house, can be the difference of having a meal or not. And especially, Roisin, it's very important if somebody's cooking for themselves and not cooking for a family. It's
yeah,
very easy to get out of the habit of cooking because you
yeah.
just wouldn't be bothered. So to have a list of meals, even if it's a baked potato and some maybe homemade beans or a little bit of salad on the side, you can make a really nice meal for one if you have some nice ingredients in the house, rather than making a stew that's going to last for 4 days and you won't want to eat a stew again for another 12 months after.
Yeah.
So it's just exactly to your point, having an idea of what you're going to have, put a plan in place, have the food in the house, and then like put portions into the freezer. So like life is busy and nobody wants to be cooking every day. So even the fact of knowing, oh, I've got that, I'll take it out of the freezer in the morning, and then when you come home you have dinner ready just to heat up, and it's a quick job and you're still eating well, and you're not putting extra pressure on your digestive system.
And what I've started doing is that instead of buying like the processed vegetables in the super, I started buying fresh vegetables and chopping them up and putting them in freezer bags in the freezer. Just
Yeah.
more healthier because the frozen food is more healthier than the processed food that you would buy.
Well, the frozen vegetables will be nutritionally as good as fresh. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd be pulling everything out of a local garden, but like at certain times of the year, you just can't get You know,
No.
even say frozen berries this time of the year, you can get lovely organic berries and keep them in the freezer. Whereas if you get them in fresh ones, they just don't have the same flavor off them. You know, you buy strawberries anytime besides the summer in Ireland. They've been flown in from some other country and they don't taste like strawberries versus a Wexford strawberry during the
Yep.
summer. And like there's no beating it, you know. So, but the nicer tasting fruit will also have more nutrients in it. So if that was been frozen the minute when it was fresh, like the consistency will definitely change on some vegetables. Like I really don't like frozen carrots, even if they're in a stew or something. It's the one thing that I'm like, oh, it really puts me off having frozen carrots. However, if you mash root vegetables and put them into the freezer frozen, if you put them into the freezer and mashed and take them back out, they reheat really well. Whereas a slice of carrot in a stew is not as nice. But nutritionally, they're as good. So if you like the texture, go for it. Like frozen spinach is great. You can get chopped onions frozen. You can get mushrooms. You can
Yeah.
get butternut squash. It's such an array of vegetables. You can get all your garlic and chili. You can get some herbs. But you're absolutely right. If something is about to go off, look and see, do I cook it and freeze it, or do I freeze it and then cook it? Because definitely you're going to save money. And like, you know, with the cost of food at the moment, people
Yeah.
say food is very expensive, but actually food waste is the biggest cost you will have. So if you're buying food and throwing it into the bin, you can't quantify the amount of money you can save unless you stop doing that, you know.
And we talked about vegetables there, because and fiber. Let's talk about fiber, because fiber, as you told me once, is the brush of the digestive system with water. So tell
Yeah.
us about that.
So fiber is absolutely like fiber is part of any of your carbohydrate rich foods. No, not any of them. So when people talk about eating carbs or carbohydrate rich foods, and carbs have a very bad reputation, and a lot of people in a menopausal, you know, scenario would be kind of saying, "Oh, I'm going low carb to try and, you know, help with weight loss or whatever." But there's a huge difference between a
Mm.
packet of Pringles, which is technically carbohydrate rich food, and a tin of chickpeas, which is also carbohydrate rich, but has also got some protein and some fiber. Fiber is really important. Fiber your body doesn't digest, but it's used by the bugs in your microbiome, and they use it as their fuel source. So we call fiber a prebiotic. So yes, it's used to bulk out your stools and clear the waste out, but it's also a really important fuel for the good bugs in your microbiome. And the different sources of fibers, you've got soluble and insoluble. But if you think of every plant source, so whether it's a piece of fruit, vegetable, nut, seed, beans, lentils, chickpeas, whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, millet, buckwheat, all of those are all going to have great sources of fiber, and the different plants are also going to have different color. Have I lost you there, Roisin?
No, you haven't. I put you on full screen so nobody can see me flashing.
That's okay. Once you can still hear me, that's all right.
There's workmen going on next door, and I think they could be interfering with the Zoom. I think
Oh, you're
back
back now.
again.
You're back.
But also you talked about chickpeas, and I remember on the radio we were talking about chickpeas, and I was saying we were talking about salad, and about people having the salad cream on their salad, and you said, Roshan, what to do is go, don't take away. This is where like don't take away. Go home and buy on your way home. Go and buy some hummus, because I
Mhm.
was saying I was having salad for dinner, and you said on the way home, buy the hummus. So on the way home after the radio, I went into to Dunn's, I bought the hummus, and I added in. I put the salad cream on, but I added in the hummus, and now
Yeah,
I love hummus.
yeah.
So it was
And you see what's really important with something like hummus. So hummus and there's lots of different varieties of it, right? But hummus is the traditional method is making with chickpeas. It can be made with beans as well. But that contains both protein and fiber. And if somebody is trying to satisfy their appetite, so if you find yourself getting hungry a lot, definitely by adding in more protein and more fiber, you're going to satisfy your appetite and you're going to feel less hungry. And when you're feeling less hungry, then you're less likely to start picking at whatever processed treat of choice that you want in the evening. So adding in something like a hummus onto a salad is going to make it much more, it's going to be more nutrient dense, but it's more satisfying and it contains some fiber in there as well. So you're feeding the bugs, you're meeting your needs, and you're meeting the needs of your microbiome so that they're getting what they need, and they can then in turn support your health, from their perspective. So adding stuff like that. Another thing that I'm a huge fan of on salads is extra virgin olive oil in salad dressings. Really, really, if you look at any of the studies about the Mediterranean diet, it's undeniable. Now, I always say studies, just because something hasn't got evidence studied doesn't mean it's not going to give you benefits. So there's a lot of things that would be possibly good for you and they just haven't been studied. But there is no doubt about extra virgin olive oil, none at all. Anywhere where the Mediterranean diet is studied, there could be a tablespoon or two of extra virgin olive oil per day in somebody's diet. And like, we are so fat phobic in this country, and particularly women who are afraid of fat for years because they thought fat was making them fat. But fat provides fat soluble vitamins. It's an anti-inflammatory, and it's really good for providing satiety. So if you feel satisfied after a meal, you're not going to be going and eating the salty, sugary, unnutritious foods later on. So it's just to try and get that nourishment into your diet. So fiber is really important, and it's not that you have to be going and adding a whole lot of brand to stuff, but anytime you're eating a plant. So, for example, and I'm kind of always slow to give examples because this really depends on the individual. But if somebody's having, say, a bowl of cornflakes or Rice Krispies or something for your breakfast, it's a carbohydrate rich, and probably like low fat milk or skim milk on it, right? It's carbohydrate, but there's no good fats, there's no protein, there's no fiber. If you have a bowl of, I'm going to say granola, but not all granola is the same, right? So if you have a bowl of granola, it's got mixed nuts and seeds, and not a huge amount of sugar, not a huge amount of oats, because some of them are just a pile of oats with like added sweeteners into it. So that's why I'm a little bit slow. But just say a 30 grams of a good quality mixture. Now you have good fats, you have lots of fiber, you've loads of protein in there. If you add some natural yogurt on that and some fresh berries, you've got lots of color, you've got good bacteria. You have a very nutritious bowl of food. And if you're not satisfied after that will keep you going for so much longer, and it's going to give you a lot more nourishment than your bowl of cornflakes, which will probably drive, and that's going to contribute to blood sugar dips, and then more biscuits or whatever mid-morning. So there's a huge disparity between the two. Now, granola is always kind of a tricky one because there's lots of not great ones on the market. So just, I suppose, that's a caveat. But you can very easily tweak your meals to make them more nutritious, more fiber rich. And then when you're putting in a bit of variety in across all of your meals during the day, you're going to get that level of fiber up, which is going to keep your bugs up. And what's really important to know about the digestive system, two things that are hugely connected, and we won't even have time to get into them today, but your immune system, I mentioned briefly. If somebody is constantly getting every bug that's going, the first place we start is with your digestive health and the health of your microbiome. So if your microbiome does not have the diversity and abundance of healthy bacteria that we want in there, there's going to be a potential for bad bacteria to overgrow. You might end up with suffering from things like candida or thrush. That can all be to do with the lack of balance of your microbiome. You can have more coughs and colds and flus. You can have more overreactions to foods, food intolerances. And it's all back to the health of your digestive tract. So immune system is one thing, and your immune system would be directly linked to food intolerances. Another thing that's really directly linked to it is your mood. So there is absolute categorical evidence at this point that a huge amount of your happy hormone serotonin is made in your gut. So when people take an antidepressant, sometimes one of the antidepressants is called an SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So what the medication is trying to do is keep serotonin in your body. But actually, if your body's not producing enough serotonin to start with, you can help by improving that, and some of that is happening in your gut. So very important to keep your digestive system healthy, and your microbiome healthy. So if you've got immune issues, if you've got mood issues, if you've got hormone imbalance, we have to make sure your digestive system is working efficiently so that we can help to regulate and balance your hormones. Everything starts with the gut. If you've got elevated cholesterol, we have to start with making sure your gut is eliminating the waste cholesterol quickly or properly. So, there's lots of different areas that are directly impacted by your gut health.
And we're running out of time, but what I would love you to talk about is the nuts, because we were talking about the salads and foods. What I've done now is I started adding nuts to salads.
Yeah.
And again, reminded that it's just in the palm of your hand.
Exactly.
And we're laughing because I was always putting in too much until I spoke to you one day.
Yeah, and it's like nuts are brilliant, but like everything, too more is not always necessarily a good thing. And the problem with nuts, not that it's a problem, but the challenge we have with nuts is it's too easy to stay eating them. So, and it's the one thing I would notice with people as well. If people say to me, "Oh, I snack," and I always ask the question, "Are you hungry or is it just a habit?"
Yeah.
Because a lot of us don't snack. We have a small meal. So our snacks are too big to be an actual snack. And I don't work in calories. I don't think it's good for your head to be counting calories. But a snack should be a very small portion of food. And it's just to keep you nutritionally balanced until your next meal, if your meals are too far apart, if you feel the need to keep your blood sugar stabilized. But if you can avoid doing it, sometimes you're doing better. So sometimes by eating nuts, we just eat too many of them. Nuts are absolute powerhouses. Nuts and seeds, I'm going to add them in here as well, because every nut and seed they're all very nutrient dense, and different nuts and seeds are going to have different nutrients in them. So I don't want you to be looking at your plate going, "Oh, I've got selenium here and I've got calcium here and I've got really good source of magnesium here." If you can try and include a variety, it's a great way of doing it. Having nuts or seeds on tops of salads or curries or on top of your breakfast are really good sources of protein, fiber, good fats, and all the micronutrients, all the little small stuff your body needs to function, all the nutrients to run. Like when people say to me, "Oh, I don't want to take supplements," I'm in agreement. Supplements are a very short-term solution while we're getting the nutrients into your food.
Yeah.
And nuts and seeds are a really good way of doing it. But get variety. Because all of them give you different benefits. So what I love doing is, if I'm having, say, that granola that I talk about for breakfast, I say granola, it's not granola. It's basically what I do is I get maybe 5 different types of nuts, throw them into a jar, and I put a couple of tablespoons of different types of seeds and put them all into a jar. So in the mornings, if I have a couple of tablespoons of that mixture, I could have 8 different nuts and seeds in that jar. And that's the basis of my breakfast. And if I start with that, there's a huge, when I'm talking about gut health and diversity, I'm always talking about, like, I always suggest to people to try and aim for 30 different plants in a week. If you have 8 in your breakfast bowl, you have a fairly good start made on that 30, Now, I know it's the same 8 for until that jar runs out, and then you get a different variety in there. But it's a good start, and over the course of the week, then you can get variety into other meals, and it just gives you something tasty. It tastes different the next time you get it, but a really powerful portion of food. The other way I use them a lot is I make a trail mix. So great for kids after school when they're trying to go for treats. I have a trail mix, so I have mixed nuts and seeds. I have a bag of M&Ms or some kind of a chocolate in it, or some dried fruit, or dried cranberries or something like that. There might be a handful of pretzels or something salty like that, or even I think there was chili nuts or something in the last batch. And the kids can get a handful out of that, and they get the little bit of salt or the little bit of sweet or the little bit of something, but they also have a handful of really nutritious, nourishing.
So again, it's going back for the children, add in before you take away.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just don't have a row with them over food. No. Just try and give them an alternative that's not. And then, if they're having treats, they're going to have treats anyway, obviously. And with Patrick's Day coming up, it's going to be lots of treats. But it's just to allow to try and get some nourishment in there, and it'll help keep their moods stable as well, and balance their blood sugar, so that they're not having little hunger issues as well. But it's a great way. Nuts and seeds are absolute powerhouses. Just Try not to have them in the car because you'll eat the entire bag.
Yeah. And yeah. We'll finish off now. Turmeric. Tell us, turmeric is very good for our digestive system, isn't it? And also for inflammation and many other things. Maybe just briefly put on that. Maybe we'll talk about that and the immune system and another program.
Turmeric is brilliant. It's a root. If anybody knows, if you've ever seen it in the supermarket, it looks like a little small piece of ginger. It's kind of a knobbly little small root, and when you take the skin off it, it's orange on the inside. It's really, really powerful antioxidant. Really good for inflammation, as you said. Really good. However, we struggle to eat enough of it. Like if you're in India and you're having curries daily and you're having turmeric daily, you're going to eat a lot of it. So I would always add it. I'd add it to my rice when I'm cooking, so food will go yellow. If you are looking for a large dose of it, you probably need to supplement it. And then you've got the disadvantage that it's quite difficult for your body to absorb it. So really good anti-inflammatory. It wouldn't be my first port of call when it comes to the digestive system. It would be really up there if somebody's looking for support around aches and pains and joint health. That's where I'd be looking for it. Quite expensive. Supplements are expensive, so you try and get as much in. Try and correct your diet first, and then add the supplements if you need them. But or use the supplements in the short term while you're correcting your diet. But ultimately, you want to try and get as much as you can through your food and not be throwing your food into the bin.
And at the end of the day, it's all about going back to basics, back to what our grandmothers used to cook, buying fresh, buying in season,
Yeah.
and being very aware in our meal plan and our preparation, but also in our shopping, knowing again who we're cooking for, what we're shopping for, who we're cooking for, and our why, and what we eat, how we eat, and when we eat. Linda Murray, Beoga Nutrition. I am always going, well, after I speak to you, I'm always changing something in my diet or in my food behavior. Now, every time I'm going to be preparing food, I'm going to be taking in the aroma of the food and then the taste, and I'm going to know that is the start of my digestive organ and system. And brushing out my system and feeding the good bugs and the bad bugs. I forget what Dr. Anne-Marie Eustace-Ryan called them: Mo, Joe, and Fo with an E, and then they're the good ones. I think I stand to be corrected, but the good bugs in our intestines need fed, and not to feed the bad, naughty, bold bugs.
Yeah, but that's such a phenomenal achievement to have that book out there, so that we're educating our kids. I mean, my poor children, every time, like, they obviously get treats, but I'm constantly like, oh, we need to, feed the army in your digestive tract the whole time. And just to give them a little bit of encouragement around what they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. Kids are very visual, but once they get it, they get it. It's brilliant. So fair play to her on that book. It's an amazing achievement. So I hope it does really, really well for her.
I'm going to add the links to your programs to her YouTube channel and vice versa. So people then will have the option of listening to the two of you, and there's been a nice flow to telling the story of our digestive system and our gut.
Brilliant.
But you'll come on again and talk about all the different issues relating to our nutrition and diet and our gut and everything else, and our moods and our anxiety. And I'm always going aha, and a moment. So Linda Murray, thank you so much indeed.
You're very welcome, Roisin. Have a great day.
You have a 6-week plan. Tell us about that, and tell us how people can get in contact with you.
Our course is running currently now, so we're not taking in new attendees for this session. But if somebody is interested in doing, it's a 4-week online course that we do for the Digestive Reset program. We do have a cholesterol course as well online, but we do one-to-ones with people. What I would always say is, if you're curious or interested or wondering if we're the right people for you, give me a call. Our website that's the company name, beoganutrition.ie. So you can look us up on the website or any of our social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook. But if you want to give either Jenny or I a call, and have a chat and see. We'll do kind of a 10-minute chat and see, are we the right fit for you, and see if we can come up with a suggestion of how we can help. And then if you're interested, we can get you in and work it from there. We'll come up with a plan from there.
Well, Linda Murray, thank you so much indeed.
You're very welcome. Good to talk to you, Roisin.